Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield has been among the most aggressive AGs in the nation in challenging President Trump's executive orders and Elon Musk's DOGE job cuts. Oregon's top lawyer has joined other Democrat attorneys general in about a dozen lawsuits on issues ranging from birthright citizenship to mass firings of federal employees to challenges to the way elections are run. Mr. Rayfield was Oregon House Speaker before he was elected Attorney General in November. Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield, welcome back to Eye on Northwest Politics.
Well, thanks for having me, Ken.
Why are you being so aggressive in challenging this administration?
Really, this is about making sure that we are following the Constitution and making sure that we as a democracy are following the rule of law. And I think when you talk to Democrats, you talk to Republicans, you talk to independents, everyone agrees that the Constitution should always be followed. Everyone agrees that our federal law should be followed. And it doesn't matter who you are. You can be the most powerful person in the world. You can be the President of the United States, but you have to respect and follow the Constitution and our laws. And that has been one of the roles that we've been taking as attorneys general, is to hold the line when the president decides through an executive order to push those bounds.
Which of the executive orders or actions by Elon Musk and DOGE do you feel most affect Oregonians?
Well, it's in two different ways, right? The first one is we walk through our communities, through our state. We all have expectations of privacy, right? And it's incredibly fascinating to me that when we file our tax returns, we have these expectations of privacy. DOGE under Elon Musk have tried to be above the law to get access to information we all believe private, which is the irony of that. The biggest irony about this is during the first Trump administration, President Trump, when he was running for office, refused to give his own tax returns up. And so for me, it's about treating the president and our citizens of the United States equally and making sure that we all have expectations to privacy in our community.
Are there any specific executive orders that you feel had more of an impact in Oregon than others?
Oh, goodness. You know, one of the things that and you'll see a set of lawsuits really focused on this, and one of them was even last week. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars of funding to this state that are in jeopardy. Last week, it was the National Institute of Health, and this was really where we have at stake more than $240 million of funding that could come into the Oregon Health Sciences University. And we're talking about things that we all care about, right? This is about research on HIV, cancer research, diabetes, opioid addiction. That's what's at stake right now. And that's why it was so important that we stood together to make sure that the Trump administration follows Congress's intent. Congress gets to pass the laws. Congress, the president needs to follow those laws.
The president has targeted individual lawyers and law firms that have challenged him or represented clients that he doesn't like. How are attorneys general any different in this situation?
Well, I think it's incredibly important that you don't have attorneys general threatening or trying to impugn the judiciary and the independence of our judiciary. What is an interesting thing that's going on right now in our time in the United States, this is the first time you have had Congress and a president of the United States trying to attack the judiciary, the independence of the judiciary, because they don't like the rulings that are going on. And the rulings, mind you, are coming from Republican judges and Democrat judges.
So are the courts the last line of defense here?
They are a co-equal branch of government, and they are an important place to be. I believe Congress also needs to be responsive and hold the president accountable as well. And so you have attorneys general working in the judiciary space, you have Congress, and you have the executive branch. We all play important roles to the foundation of our democracy.
How much are you and Governor Kotek in contact about which of these executive orders that you challenge?
We all stay in on our lanes, and we're all incredibly busy people. What I will say about the governor, she's been incredibly wonderful to work with. Her team is amazing, and I consider her a partner in this process. I think we both have the same values when it comes to making sure we're upholding the rule of law. And we have to work with her agencies as we're moving forward and assessing the impact to Oregonians. And they've been nothing but helpful and supportive as we move through this process.
You've had a couple of at least temporary victories related to the job cuts by Elon Musk and DOGE, especially in the area of probationary federal employees. Are the courts able to at least slow down that process enough in order to get this worked out?
The court system and the legal process takes time, and there's certain processes in place where we can get immediate relief, what we call like a TR or a temporary restraining order, and then we work towards getting a preliminary injunction. And so in some of these cases, we have been able to get some of this immediate action to stop some of these from moving forward. I would be remiss to note that there have been some recent rulings, though, and how from the Supreme Court and how they are thinking about how temporary restraining orders should be applied by the lower courts. And this is something that is still developing. And so we have had some favorable rulings. We may shift a little bit in how that is going to roll out over time.
You've been to Arizona, had a town hall with their AG, Chris Mays. Chris Mays here in Portland this week for a town hall that you're hosting as well. You've also worked closely with the Attorney General of Washington State, that's Nick Brown. To what extent are you and the other Democrat attorneys general coordinating your efforts to challenge the administration?
Well, listen, what's going on right now and the attacks on our Constitution and the attacks on the rule of law are immense. There's a lot of them, and it requires coordination between all of us and the resources in all of our offices to work together to make sure that we are enforcing the rule of law, make sure that we are enforcing the Constitution. And that's what you're seeing. One of the interesting issues is you have the Trump administration making decisions in the dark without public input on issues that are incredibly important. And that's why we're holding the town hall tonight. We have Democratic attorneys general holding public forums to people talk about the impacts of these federal decisions. Because if the Trump administration is not going to solicit public input for a public process, we will. And that's what makes a successful democracy, is public input.
And just want to say for our viewers, this interview is airing on Sunday. When you say tonight, we actually recorded it on Thursday when the town hall actually happened. Now, you're also holding town halls in other parts of the state. You had one in Eugene this week with House Speaker Julie Fahey. What are you hearing from constituents at these town halls?
It's very interesting and it's very varied. So last night we had a member from TSA talking about the impacts that the cuts can have when we think about as we're just traveling through our daily lives through an airport. We then started, one of the other things that I found very fascinating is we think about food insecurity, right? We have heard from farmers that are relying upon federal grants that have lost money, but they have crops in the ground in reliance upon money that's coming from the federal government. You then have individuals who distribute the food, and then you have the people who need the food in community. You're hearing the entire chain of supply and the folks benefiting from being impacted. We've heard from people who work in the VA hospitals who have been cut without notice, and some of the type of care and treatment that they're providing for veterans. That's the type of thing that you need. If you're doing it responsibly, you move them on to another set of care. In this case, we're not doing any transitionary service. People are just being cut off. And so these are the type of things that a community hall or in a community hearing we're able to hear from and then be able to better respond in the moment. But also at the same time, the Trump administration should not be able to make decisions without public input, right? They should be able to know about the harm that is being created so that they can make better decisions down the road. But ultimately, those decisions should be in Congress. And if they were being made in Congress, we wouldn't be having these town halls.
Yes, and we don't have a lot of time left for this discussion, but you mentioned the National Institutes of Health, how that could affect institutions like OHSU. You also have filed a lawsuit regarding library funding and museums as well here in the state. So briefly, just talk about that.
Yeah, briefly what that is we've had cuts to smaller agencies, and there's money that comes into our state library from the federal government that then goes out to rural communities. It goes out to a very common book program that all of our kids compete with that really incentivizes reading in the elementary level. And a lot of these programs are now being cut or with the threats of reductions of money in those spaces.
Bottom line here, 22 of the 50 AGs are Democrat. Some of these joint lawsuits have included up to 21 of you. Can you make a difference here? Can AGs actually be a last line of defense? And I know I asked you this, but just the bottom line.
I absolutely believe so. And I believe that we have an ethical responsibility to continue this work. Our democracy is precious. The separation of powers is precious. An independent judiciary is precious. Free press is incredibly important in our government. And we need people who are going to uphold those values in our country. And I believe at different times you have different roles for Congress, executive powers, and attorneys general, and the judiciary in that spot. And right now, we are being stress tested. Our democracy is being stress tested. And you have attorneys general and others that are working to make sure that we maintain the fabric of our democracy.
Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield, thanks for coming back to Eye on Northwest Politics.
Thank you for having me.